Tuesday. I'm your host, Jess Del Pino, and this week I have Matt Terry, who is also an FDNP fitness trainer and one of the speakers at our FDN Educational Symposium in October. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Where are you joining us from?
Kansas City.
Oh, fun. How's the weather?
It's about 100 degrees and like 110% humidity.
Wow, that's super humid. I'm in Austin, Texas.
Oh, right on, yeah.
Yeah, we have a pretty high humidity too, but that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty humid here. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about working beyond diet and exercise for weight loss and vitality. And with that, you know, we really feel like there's more to it when you work with somebody than just moving your body and what you put in your body. That's a whole health system and your whole lifestyle, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And he's going to be talking more about this during the FDN Symposium, where you guys can get more info at fdnsymposium.com. Make sure you comment below also, and we'll send you a link so you guys can get tickets. And that's going to be on October 1st and 2nd. Tickets are only $129. And if you're wondering, is this for you? Yes, it is. If you're health-minded in any way, shape, or form, if you're a professional in any way, shape, or form in this industry, or you're just interested, it's definitely for you. So we're looking at health coaches, nutrition professionals, nutrition educators, chefs, dietitians, trainers, medical professionals, doctors, counselors, physical therapists, massage therapists, anybody who's interested in health. This is definitely something you want to attend. And it's, you know, just more continued education for the professional, but also taught by other professionals. That's kind of the big draw this year, is that, you know, we're not just bringing in big, heavy hitters. We're bringing in people who are in this community, people who are your peers, who are really looking to share their knowledge of how they've been able to utilize dress from the FDN philosophy and help clients. So if you guys aren't, DRESS stands for diet, rest, exercise, stress management, and supplementation. And so we're going to have people in all of those areas talk about how they've been able to incorporate that to actually help clients. And that's exactly why we have Matt here today, is because Matt's a physical fitness trainer, and he works a lot with movement and exercise. And I'm sure diet's a big part of that. But you've noticed how it's a lot more than just those two things. So I'm sure people, you know, they put in the movement, they can do the exercise, but maybe it's too much or it's too little, or it's not the right kind. And there's other factors that they're looking at or they're not looking at that could be really affecting them to get to where they want, right? So if you're looking for better vitality, a better life, or even just weight loss, there's more to it than just that. So I'd love to turn it over to Matt and just kind of get a little bit more info about what it is he's going to be talking about, and just your kind of understanding of the E in dress.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, that was, I think, a perfect explanation. I think, and for those of you that are watching the show too, if you're not an FDN practitioner, you're absolutely missing out. So one of the things that excited me about the symposium this year that is being taught by people who actually practice FDN, and you're in the trenches, right? And you're busy people, and you know, a lot of times you're successful in your area in terms of either helping people or building a business. And a lot of times the best people to learn from are the people who do it and the people who are going through it every day. And obviously, as we were talking about off air, I'm really excited that it's actually virtual, because my practice is so busy, I wouldn't be able to speak if it were in person, because I can't travel that much anymore. It has to be really specific. So I'm really excited about this, just because I can also see other practitioners and their speeches, and I can have copies of this as well, which normally, if I go to an event, I don't have enough time to stick around anyway. So I'm actually really excited about it as well. So, but anyway, to your point, yeah, so my background was as a personal trainer. I have been for over 20 years, and I own a personal training studio in Overland Park, Kansas with my partner. And so we've had that open now for about 11 years. And you can really kind of see with what we're talking about in the actual topic itself. So I kind of have, not only we're going to talk about obviously what the dress protocol is, but we're going to talk obviously about exercise. But you can see, so what I kind of break it down is like what we talk about is optimal health is more than just diet and exercise. And that's teaching people more than calories in and calories out and movement. And when most people are trying to get healthy, it's usually because they want to lose weight. But obviously, as the FDN space, you work with people with health problems, a lot of different things. So when most people come to us, it's primarily for weight loss, unless it's a health coaching client, which is entirely different. But when they're looking for weight loss, most people get very, very, very hyper-focused on their calories, and they get very hyper-focused on exercising. and they kind of forget everything else. They don't forget, they underestimate how important sleep is. You know, they understand like having toxic relationships with their spouse, the boss, whomever, like having, you know, no purpose in life. Like all these things actually do matter in terms of optimal health. And so one of the things that I'll be presenting is like what really optimal health is, not just diet and exercise, but every piece of that and how we cover stress. I'm also going to cover case studies of actual clients with lab data in terms of this is what this person was doing before when they were only doing like say diet or they were only doing exercise and they weren't focusing on the rest of the dress protocol. And here's what happened. We changed everything. And here's the lab values. Here's the before and afters. Like we show all of the changes when someone actually does the full dress protocol, and they always get substantially better results every single time. And I have data when people revert back, like when they kind of get really stressed out and they drop like, you know, like they just go back to being hyper-focused on exercise and diet and they kind of forget everything else. Or they get really focused on supplementation and they forget everything else. And you'll see all of the progress go backwards and you'll see them really make no progress. And when you're tracking lab data like we do in FDN, where you're testing and you're not guessing, I mean, you have objective, you know what I mean, data. Like when I had a particular client who I talk about in this, who was going through phases of life that unfortunately for that particular person led to disease processes, you could see it changing if you just watched his labs based off the stress he was under. So those are things that we'll talk about, and we talk about why that's important. And also we talk about what's really important is exercise is probably one of the variables that you could probably call the Goldilocks variable the most in terms of it's the appropriate amount of exercise, not too little, but not too much, because too much exercise is even worse than even, you know, too little or not exercising at all because of a you know, stressor standpoint, right? Increases oxidative stress, increased DNA damage, we can increase mineral depletion, like all these things. So you can cause hormonal damages, HPA axis imbalances, like the list goes on. And I cover that in the presentation along with what symptoms happens, what to look out for, how to get someone out of overtraining syndrome, especially with the popularity of CrossFit, I've got clients who are like ultra marathon runners. I have one in Leadville next week and she'll do the 100-mile race.
Wow.
Like crazy stuff. I would never do. And I think it's terrible for you. But if you like it, I'm going to help you get through it. But as I told her, we've got to monitor all this. Your sleep has to be hyper important. Like we're managing all kind of stressors from her life. And it's a very specific event that she won't do that often. So, you know, just covering that and then covering activity guidelines for athletes and what we call people who are in the healing protocols, because that's completely different. As someone's going through a healing protocol, you actually have to dial their activity back pretty substantially because it does affect their recovery abilities and their healing abilities. And then we'll go through like a pretty broad Q&A of all the topics we presented, the case studies and how we kind of implement it. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wow. That's quite a talk though. Like I love the whole idea of the Goldilocks syndrome of it just, you know, it has to be just right. And I'm sure that changes too, depending on where you are in your journey.
Absolutely. If you see like people that are a little bit, I don't want to say healthier because what's the true definition of that, but let's just say someone who's more mobile and more active and can do more. It's really easy for them, especially if they don't have a ton of symptoms. A lot of people kind of perceive lack of symptoms as health when you just may either be ignoring them or you're not experiencing symptoms yet. So some of those people, they can dive too far into diet and exercise and then pulling them back out of it just because of, again, the stressor that exercise can present. And again, in this world in fitness, most people are usually dieting, right? So a lot of times their calories are too low, their activity's too high, they're not sleeping enough, they're on too many stimulants, like they're just stressing themselves from every possible scenario. And that's why those people don't get better and they see temporary progress, if anything, or usually they just get worse and they, you know, unfortunately somebody has developed some health problems they have to fix later.
Yeah. No, and that's like a good point. The idea of like maybe you don't have symptoms, so you think you're better or you're doing okay, but it doesn't mean that your body's not in a state of recovery or recovering from something or dealing with something, right? Like as FDNs, we are very good at understanding that there are internal stressors that we may not see, which is why we test and we test again, but not just the testing, right? We correlate that with their lifestyle factors, their habits, their medical history, their intake forms, you know, their emotional state, the type of food they're eating, the environment they're in. There's so many things to look at, and to have a bird's eye view from an FDN's perspective, it really can showcase that maybe you don't think you have symptoms, but you might actually have symptoms. It might be very subtle.
Absolutely. I think on our intake form, I think one of the things that's interesting is we have like a 34-page intake form that when new clients come in that they have to fill out. And a lot of those are dress type questions, like what's your sleep like, what's your stress level like, talk about nutrition, what supplements do you take, like, you know, do you have any, you know, obstacles or stressors going on? And, you know, honestly, before I became an FDN practitioner, I mean, I knew how important stress and some of the other stuff was, but I didn't, even myself, I probably didn't practice stress management at all or that well. And I worked too much and I worked out too much. I just did too many things I kind of teach clients not to do. But then I noticed, like, when I started practicing FDN, a lot of people get an FDN to also work on themselves, right? So I had some health issues. So I got an FDN to work on my health issues for myself. And it also obviously helped tons of my clients. But the thing that I noticed too is I even myself was really just getting hyper-focused on diet and exercise, and my labs and the things that I was trying to change or monitor weren't changing. And when I really kind of dove into like really fixing my gut, like for example, my personal platelets count has always been low my entire life. It's never been above 130. And so when I really started doing FDN, working my gut, we're seeing why my platelets are so low and some of the oxidative stress that was associated with it. Now they generally run between 190, 200 every single lab, and they've been stable for a long time. And I tried a million things before that to get it up. And so it wasn't really till I even did the full dress protocol myself, and really managed my stress, really focused on sleep and cutting out toxic relationships and not working so much, like that, all that stuff actually really does matter. Even my own health improved and all my own labs improved. And I even share my story because I've kind of a past with cancer and some other stuff. So all that's weaved into my presentation. I show my labs of here's what everything I did before. My background, I was an Olympic athlete. I was an elite level competitor for a long time. So which just means I've probably had tons of surgeries, done tons of things wrong, driven myself from the ground many times, and I still have tons of injuries I have. So that's kind of the world that I work on is educating people. Like, again, this is a Goldilocks nutrients for a reason, because if you push this too hard, there's going to be a huge problem. And not simply focusing on exercise or food is going to get where you want to be.
Oh, for sure. And Kim just commented and said, great topic. I totally agree with everything you're sharing. So awesome, Kim. Let us know if you have any questions for Matt while he's on here. But it's so true, you know, I think in the world that we live in now, people do get very hyper-focused, right? We have a world of medical professionals that are hyper-specialized into one area of your health. And we forget that there are so many things that can influence that. And I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit further into some of the, like, what happens with people who kind of have that overtraining syndrome, right? Like, I think some of us can get a little bit scared about, I mean, at least for me, I can only speak for myself. I'm saying everyone, but I've had an autoimmune condition for 20 plus years of my life, right? So I've known that I need to exercise, but I've always had that fear that maybe I'm exercising too much, that I'm not recovering, because a lot of my stuff is gut related. So I have other people who've told me, no, you can exercise more, but I've had problems with recovery because of my issues until I started going through the dress protocol. But for some people, like, what would you say, would you consider over exercising versus somebody who maybe isn't doing enough because they're just like scared to get into that whole over exercising kind of column?
I think this is a really good question. And I think it really depends on what your background is. So when I see people, so a lot of people obviously, like I said, come to us for exercise. That's part of what we do. And one of the things I noticed too is if someone hasn't been an athlete, and I don't mean this derogatory in any way, they generally don't train that hard and they don't understand what really hard work is. So that's a different conversation, because usually with them, it's pushing them to the appropriate amount. So they actually get the benefit of the stimulus without overtraining them, right? But then we also work with a lot of athletes and a lot of like former meatheads like me. And it's like the total opposite. It's like, we're doing way less activity. You have to do way more stretching. You have to do way more mobility. You have to do way more stress management. Like we've got to tone this thing down. And for those people, you're just constantly pulling them back.
Gotcha.
So symptom wise, it kind of depends. So if someone's coming to us and they generally don't have energy issues, and meaning they're not using tons of caffeine and they can get throughout the day without taking a nap, and they wake up and they feel pretty energetic and pretty charged throughout the day. And if it's a woman, if they don't have cold hands and feet and their hair's not falling out and they don't have dry skin and they're not constipated, then we'll kind of give them guidelines. And I talk about in the presentation of like fitness and general health. This is the guidelines for how we kind of outline everything for their activity and what they do. And then I call when someone's in a healing phase or a health coaching client, that's entirely different. Like there will be no cardiovascular in that program. I'm telling you right now, it's just going to be walking, because it's way too much of a stressor. And one of the things that we get with some of the health coaching clients is, and I talk about a couple of them in my presentation, is they get hyper focused on exercises, especially when they have autoimmune conditions, and you start to see them go backwards and start to see more flares and you start to see more issues and more gut problems and more fatigue, right? So it's a lot of this is when we teach clients, like if you're entering a phase, if you're currently exercising and you're like, you have zest for it and you're excited, and when you exercise and you're not extremely sore for several days and you have good energy, and after your workout, you're not like crashing, then you're probably okay. And you're probably okay for the right amount of your exercise you're doing. But to your point, like a lot of the women or just people in general, because I have Hashimoto's and I have all kinds of other autoimmune things, and I've got multiple tumors. I mean, we're all like collections of fun things. When I get people like that and health coaching side, like, again, it's reduced activity, but strength training and yoga and other things like that are a big part of what we do, because there's a stressor and then you get to rest. The problem with the cardio, and especially the intense cardio, like long distance running, would absolutely never be a part of a plan for a health coaching client, because that constant amount of stress, you've got cortisol production, not to mention how many minerals are already losing. They're probably super depleted anyway. Like there's no way I would allow that. And that person's not going to get any better, or it's really going to go much, much slower. So when we kind of put out the protocol of like, again, if your circulation isn't getting cold, right, and if your sleep isn't suffering, and you're not noticing, like if you're wearing like any kind of biomarker, like if you're not noticing your resting pulse coming up, like usually what you'll start to see too, like in overtraining syndrome, you'll usually see like resting pulse up sometimes 10, 15 beats. So as that starts increasing, right, that's a stressor. So things like, again, sleep disruption, constant fatigue, joint pain, like you're just not looking forward to working out anymore. If you're noticing getting more colds more frequently, more sickness more frequently, and or you just, again, you're just not feeling like working out at the time, it may not even be from overtraining. You may just be under recovering from all the other stressors in your life, and that's why you have to dial it back. And then with people with exercise, we always tell them, like, this is a gas break relationship. Like I have a great example of a client I'm coaching right now that she's been with me for 8 months, and we've taken her from like no period, tons of gut issues, to now she's like teetering back to everything's pretty much normal. But she even notices she's been doing some like exercise classes. She's in Austin actually, and she's been doing some exercise classes. And I told her, I said, these are very intense. You need to be careful when you do these, because these might set you backwards. So after her first month, she actually lost her cycle. And so part of that is, it's too much activity yet. We've got to close down. And she's just noticing she's getting more and more fatigued. And I said, this is what we're talking about. So again, you're going to go through phases where you have seasons where you can push harder because you feel better. And you're going to have time where you're a lot more stressed, you're not sleeping very well, and you don't feel good. And you're going to have to dial it back. And part of the thing that we talk about in the presentation is really looking at what biomarkers you can monitor yourself. And they're not even lab-based, that you can see these at home, and the ways that you can feel. And this works for, like, again, both athletes and both what we call general population, people who aren't designing, not just trying to be in a sport. They just want to be in fitness. So those are kind of what we split it up. But especially if you're a health coaching client and you're recovering, or you're on a gut protocol, or these are where we slow way down with a lot of these people.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? I think a lot of problems that come with people who have especially autoimmune issues, right? We don't listen to our bodies to begin with. And so, I put up on the screen here to listen to your body when you exercise. And when you're done exercising, like Matt said, if you're super fatigued, if the next day through the next few days, you have lots of muscle cramps and, you're just feeling super sore, like whatever it was that you did, well, either you would push yourself way too hard, you're not ready to get there, you need to work up to what you did, or you're not recovering enough and you've got other things going on, and it's okay. You can just dial it back and do something else. Like I'm a big one into yoga, and I love hot yoga, but even some hot yoga classes to me are really intense. And I've had to go like, nope, I'm just going to sit here and watch all the people do all the stuff, and I'm not going to do it. So, it's about listening to yourself and to be able to kind of check in and see, like, some of the stuff that Matt's going to share with us during the symposium are some of these markers that you can keep track of yourself. We're not going to give that away today. You have to come to the symposium to be able to get that information. So make sure you guys comment below, and we'll send you some more info about that. But we got another comment from Kim. So Kim, I'm not sure if it's going to fit on the screen, but I try to teach my clients to find a level of exercise that best suits their needs. Having been athletic all my life, I found that at 61, I can't push my body like I used to. The mental stress of dealing with aging can be difficult. I found that less is more now. Recovery is an important part of exercising. Too much exercise is too stressful, or is so stressful on an older body, even though the mind says push. Balance is key. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And then she actually went on to ask, do you find that the mental dial back as people age is difficult for those who've been athletic their entire lives? Yeah, Kim, I think you're absolutely right. And I struggle with that with myself. I just turned 43, and I just realized probably my last birthday, there's probably things that I can't do anymore that I was doing that I probably shouldn't be doing, exercise related. And I see that a lot with people who are former athletes, and people who are like, like just the hard charging CEO types, like just really aggressive, really assertive. Like those are always the people that we are dialing back on everything, like caffeine. Like they need less caffeine, they need more sleep, they need less exercise, they need less stress. It's like they need less calories. Like it's like less of everything that's bad, and they need more of everything that's good. And that's the hardest part of getting those people to heal. And I personally see most of those people struggle in healing protocols because they're so just go that they don't understand that, like what Kim was talking about. What I teach my clients is like, you have programmed days of rest for a reason. This doesn't mean like, oh, I felt okay today, so I went and did like a 10-mile run. I'm like, you defeated the purpose of a rest day. So it's like we have rest days for a reason. So yeah, I think that I do see that as I see that. And it depends on the mindset too, especially when weight loss is the primary goal and that people are really scale hyper focused. That's when we definitely have a hard time dialing the exercise back and just getting them out of the calories in versus calories out. I have to exercise more. I have to eat less, like this trap. Like that's the hard one, honestly. And that's where you see most of the problems. And when you talk about the symptoms of overtraining, you'll see it in those people the fastest because they just don't have enough calories to run on and recover anyway. So you're going to see the problems faster. And that's when you see, like we talked about, HPA axis dysfunction, hormonal imbalances, tons of gut issues. You'll see autoimmune problems develop from that. Athletic anemia is a super common problem. And you're going to see a bunch of other issues. And like I said, that's what I'll talk about. But the main issues is you're going to see health problems. And what unfortunately is some of these same health problems that some of these people are trying to fix in the health coaching side are problems that are probably or partly created from the overindulgence of exercise in some of our clients. Like especially ultra runners or just people who've been marathon runners for like 50 years and they're just trashed. So it's always about balance is really what it is.
Yeah, no, and that's so key, right? Like the rest days or, rest days, more than one, are key. Like I was even telling my boyfriend, because I've been working up toward being able to just run 10 minutes on the treadmill.
Nice.
Or run a mile on, outside because it's different. And, just slowly working my way up. And then I kind of had like a little bit of a relapse the other day, like last week, where I was just feeling really fatigued. And so I was just like, no, I'm just going to take all of next week, like off and do nothing. And then yesterday we went for like a short walk and I ran up a hill and I was like, oh, I feel great. This feels awesome. I'm not sore today. Everything's good. So it really, you have to listen to yourself, and it's okay if like you get busy or you can't work out, but I stretch every day. I do yoga every day. I kind of just keep the movement going because it's not like when you're resting, it's not like you're doing nothing, right? But it's just changing what the movement is. So it's like, I always make sure I sweat every day. I always make sure I stretch every day, but my intensity of workout is different depending on how I'm feeling. And I would say that would probably be the same for everybody you work with. It's just trying to find that level.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point. What you just mentioned, what I'd like to touch on. One thing that I always work on with people too is extras. We're after movement. We're not necessarily after structured exercise. Like I had a great client who had amazing health changes in her labs, everything turned around. She amazing life changes and like she's so much better. And the one thing that she was really struggling with was her mindset towards exercise. So we were working on that. I said, well, what's your struggle? And she's like, well, and this is a person who gets, 10, 12,000 steps a day. She's super active. She eats incredibly healthy. She does the full dress protocol. And so what she was saying is, well, I feel basically lazy or out of shape, but it's because she's not in the gym doing like structured workouts or CrossFit workouts or intense boot camps. But I was like, but if you look at your tracker, I'm like, you constantly move. That's all you do is move. And so sometimes it's just retraining people's paradigms is like exercise is not like structured specific things in the gym. It's just movement, and movement can be anything. And so that's what we work with our clients on, is just like step counts, and just moving around, right? And like you said, movement, stretching, it's not being an Olympic athlete, it's just being active. And there are days, right, that you need to dial it back. And that's what we teach in terms of kind of those intuitive biomarkers too. Like, man, I don't really feel good today. Well, then don't push it that hard, and there's days you're like, that's also one of the reasons, side tangent, I don't like wearable devices like the whoop strap and some of the other stuff, because I find some of the athletes I train rely so heavily on the data from that they have become really poor at recognizing their own internal biomarkers. Like, well, my watch says I should train today, but I don't feel very good. I'm like, so then don't train that hard. Yeah. Like, but my watch says, I'm like, well, who cares what your watch says? So it's like teaching people to get more back to just really like, like in terms of self-auditing, right? And like what you're talking about is auto-adjusting yourself once you learn how to do that.
Yeah. That's a funny thing you say about the trackers, right? So I wear one on my wrist and I have it on all the time. And when I first put it on, I was hyper obsessed with how much sleep I was getting. But I didn't want to fall into that trap where I was so reliant on it, right? But I mean, the first thing I do in the morning is like, how many hours of sleep did I get? How many hours of deep sleep did I get? Like, not that this thing's going to really be able to tell me, but I can see how that becomes a trap for a lot of people. And what I found is, for somebody like me, a lot of the education that I had to do for myself was, okay, where can I use this to better tune to myself and then not have to be so reliant on it? Because I had no idea my resting heart rate. I had no idea where my heart was throughout the day. I had no idea how much my heart would raise when I would exercise versus when I was sleeping. And so when I changed my perspective and I changed the way I looked at it. That's where it became really helpful. And I stopped focusing so much on like, what's the number it gave me, like the score that it gives me. I'm like, it doesn't matter about the score. But I've seen a shift in my heart rate, which has been helpful. And I've actually been able to notice now, like if I'm exercising, I can tell when my heart rate goes too high for too long. Or I'm like, oh, I'm at 180. I need to slow down, or I need to stop, and I need to catch my breath, and then I can get back up again and do what I'm doing. But had I not had this, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm interested to know, like, do you have any tips that we can give to people today as far as like helping them with educating them and changing their perspective and mindset around stuff that are, can be used as tools, but also could be traps?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say a few things on this that I see problems with wearable devices. So I have one, and I always have one on, but it's a specific one. It's the Garmin Instinct, and there's multiple reasons why I've chosen this one. Again, one is because it's not that expensive, but two, I only track step counts because there's a lot of good published data on removing like intense, structured, boring cardio sessions for someone's workout, and then getting them, instead of thinking like my client who was like, well, because I'm not in the gym, I'm not active. I'm like, no, we've got to break that association. You are active because you are active. It doesn't matter where you're active at, right? You're still active. So what we try to encourage our people on is we try to encourage them, like the only thing I'd probably say about wearable devices is get a somewhat reliable step counter. And the reason why I do that is because as we're increasing someone's fitness, I always start with step counts. And if someone's like, well, what should I do for my cardio on my off days? I'm like, you should focus on movement all day. Because what most people do, and if you look at the studies, a lot of people consider themselves active, like they go in for like a 1 hour workout or a 45-minute workout, and they are sedentary the entire rest of the day. And so if you look at that study on those people in terms of longevity, health, and fitness, that workout is negated by their sedentary lifestyle.
Wow.
So what we coach people on is like, I don't care about the 1 hour workout. I care about you do the other 23 hours a day. So why don't we get step counter and let's give you step targeting goals so we can move you towards that. And what I usually do is I will raise it 10 to 20% a week. So if a client comes in at 4,000, next week we're at 4,400. And if they hit that goal, the next week we're at 4,800. And I generally will take them up to what we feel is kind of a stretch for the day-to-day, but not a stressor for the day-to-day. So for example, if I've got a client and she's hitting 3,000 steps a day, I'm not going to take her to like 20,000 steps a day because that's ridiculous. But what I would do is we'll gradually work it. And I've done this with clients where like some clients are like, I focus on moving all day. I get up every hour. I don't sit that much. I move around. And they're like, and I like 8,000 steps for me is like the max I can do. I'm like, cool. Then that's your new goal. And that's your ceiling. But that's what we're going to try and target. So a lot of goals, like anything, have to be adjusted towards you, your lifestyle, your availability. But like with the quote that I talk about repetitively in my talk is, your stress management technique should never become a stressor. And that's what most people do with their exercise. So rather than getting these really crazy, rigid, structured rules all day of I have to eat at this time, I have to take this supplement, like people get like really robotic about these protocols. And so one of the things that we really try and teach people to do is more intuitive stuff, self-monitoring, and when it comes to exercise, how to auto-regulate that. So again, wearable devices, I like the Garmin because I found personally and on my clients, I like it because it adjusts activity levels up or down based off someone. I found it has a more reliable step count. And even though it's a wrist, and wrist isn't great in terms of heart rate monitoring, it's probably one of the better ones. And this one wasn't that expensive. And it also has 7-day battery life. So that's why I kind of chose a lot of these when I was looking at the Apple Watch. Like I tried one of everything. And what I found is most of them were accurate, and most of them had my heart rate at completely double of what they were, which then screws up a lot of data. And it also then screws up your calorie count. So if someone's using calorie monitors, which we do not use any wearable device for any kind of calorie tracking because it's completely inaccurate, and especially if you know anything about like nutrition tracking apps, the worst thing in the world is you get someone who's trying to calculate their calories for the day, trying to calculate the caloric expenditure, trying to dump all that into an app and then mix it all together and eat it. So like in MyFitnessPal, it has how many calories you burn for the day, how many calories you get to eat for the day. And so let's say you go to Orange Theory and it says you burn 700 calories an hour, which is crazy because you're not burning 700 calories an hour unless you're like a cyclist. You're probably burning 300 calories an hour. But what if you're my 1,500 calorie client and it dumps 700 more calories into her tracker? Now she's like, oh, I'm supposed to eat 2,200 calories a day because my watch said I burned 700 calories. And now she's eating like twice what she should be eating. So that's why I don't like wearable devices, because they're not that accurate and they really mess up a lot of data. Use them for a step count, use them for heart rate monitoring, like what you had mentioned, just so you can get an idea of where you feel comfortable, right? And we talked about heart rate zones and heart rate training in my talk, again, depending on which population you're in, because those are relative. And then, like I said, that's about the only, I mean, the Whoop strap's cool. There's definitely some good data. The Oura Ring's cool. But I think that a lot of times, like I said, I found when I was playing with those devices, because I am a number and device nerd and lab nerd, I mean, everything you can think of, like I track. I just found like after a while, I was like, I had my watch out and I have like my phone out, like looking at the phone app on my, you know what I mean? It's just like, at some point in time, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So that's why we just try and teach people, get a cheap step counter, just start focusing on movement. You know what I mean? And then obviously that's because if you look at the full dress protocol, right? Diet, rest, exercise, stress management, supplementation. So movements like, only 20%. So when you get hyper-focused on these little variables, you're missing the bigger picture anyway. So we just try and keep it as simple as possible for people. Movement, get a fitness tracker, and then your goals and what your exercise will be are going to be completely dependent on your background and what your goals are.
Totally. And I think that's so key, right? I wear the, I don't know if you've tried the Honor band.
I've seen that.
It's Chinese.
Oh, cool.
But it's small because I'm a tiny person. I don't want something huge on my arm. And I've just kind of gotten used to wearing it all day. Like, I'm not sure if you guys can see, I have like a little tan line here because I wear it all the time. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how accurate my heart rate is with this or even my step count, but at least gives me an idea, right? Exactly. And that's kind of where I came to it with this. Like you said, it's not about being hyper-focused on this one thing, but it's about how can I use it to my advantage so that I can become better attuned to myself, because maybe you don't realize how much your heart is beating, or you can't tell the different symptoms that come up from that and how that can just negatively affect you overall. Like for me, it's whenever I start overthinking, it's like, wow, where's my heart rate at today? Like, oh, my resting heart rate's at a 69. Okay, that's too high. I need to do some meditation. I need to kind of lower myself down for the day. But you got to find those sort of things that you can check in with yourself every day for sure. So I want to ask if anybody else has questions. Please drop them below. We still have Matt. You got to ask him right now before his talk that he has in October. He's going to be talking about exercise and how that's not the only thing you should really be focusing on when it comes to your health journey, but how you can kind of put all that together with the different things that we teach at the FDN training. We cover diet, rest, exercise, stress management, supplementation in our training. So if you haven't come through, it's definitely worth it. It just puts everything together. Plus, you get access to labs, you get access to a fantastic community, further trainings, more webinars, and the FDN Symposium, which we have happening in October of this year. So if you guys haven't commented yet, make sure you do below, or you can check the comments. I put the FDNsymposium.com, which is our website, October 1st and 2nd. Tickets are only $129. That's nothing for 2 days. I mean, how many online virtual trainings, webinars, conferences have you been to, Matt, that are $129?
Yeah, I don't think of any that were that cheap.
Yeah, we've got 2 full days. That's pretty inexpensive. But yeah, Matt's going to be talking a lot about how you can kind of go beyond diet and exercise with your clients and yourself, whether it's looking at weight loss or overall health and vitality. There's so much that you can really look at. Oh, Jennifer, yay. Are you coming to the symposium? I'm so excited that you're excited. Definitely don't want to miss Matt's talk.
Well, I think what you said too, I do want to emphasize one thing about FDN and the course and certification itself. The reason I did FDN was because of the ability to order and learn how to read and interpret labs. That's the sole reason I got an FDN. Because when I looked at all the other non-licensed practitioner programs, none of them offered that.
Yeah.
And even like Chris Kresser, I mean, some of the bigger programs, which are great, they don't offer that ability to do that. That's why I specifically chose FDN. And I can tell you, like I've been through FDN 1, 2, and I just finished 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we did the beta group for the 3, which was it's probably I would say FDN 3 is probably the best course I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And it was amazing. So what I would say is FDN is, once you get into it, like in the level 2 modules, all the advanced modules are unbelievably fantastic. I mean, it's very short. It's to the point. It gives you all of the handouts, all the collateral, all the information you need, and all the research, all the studies. Like, it's very well done. And I know when you kind of get into the functional side, there's a lot of woo-woo stuff. I can definitely tell you there's not a lot of woo-woo stuff in FDN, which I was also attracted to, because I understand not everything is going to have a study behind it, but there are some things that, need to be verified, and it is, and it's I think it's fantastic. So I think it definitely, if you're a practitioner on the fence and you're not ability to order labs and you can't do this and you are guessing at everything, you would definitely be missing not only a huge piece of your own health puzzle, but there's going to be a lot of people you can't help, and that's the unfortunate piece. So once you actually learn this, I mean, you definitely feel like you have tools to help most people, which is awesome.
Yeah, and it's a great thing. Like you said, you have the tools to help pretty much anybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like when it comes to, I think, we get a lot of people like you, right? We get a lot of people who want the study. They want to see the numbers. They want to have the labs because they want to be precise. And it's great because you have the ability to work with an individual. But the great thing about FDN is that we're non-specific. Like, we're not focusing on any one particular ailment. We're not focusing on any one particular test, or any one particular way to work with somebody. It's about taking those 5 different areas and working on all of those with somebody. So even if somebody comes to you and they have a really serious illness that they've been dealing with for a long time, it doesn't mean that you can't help them clean up their diet, that you can't help them with, better rest and recovery, with proper exercise, with stress management, and even some targeted supplementation. All of those things are going to help them with their chronic illness and better managing that illness on a more natural and holistic way, as opposed to just relying on doctors and medications and surgeries and procedures and all this other stuff. And it's not to say that they won't still have to do those things, but it will drastically go down. And the great thing that I love is the education that you offer to the clients you work with. It's about giving them and empowering them and giving them that confidence that they know what's right for themselves. Because I grew up in the medical system and I was always told that I don't know what's right for me. And that this medication is going to be helping me. And I don't, even though I'm like, I don't want to do that. What other option do we have? Oh, we have none. I'm like, what?
Absolutely.
So yeah, if nothing else, FDN definitely helps you empower other people, regardless of how you want to work with people or whatever you want to do. And it's so cool. I'm so glad to hear that you went through FDN2 and FDN3. It just shows like the continued education that we offer and that we're constantly thinking about what our community is going to need. So for those of you who don't know, FDN2 just comprises a bunch of different advanced courses, like Matt said, are very small, concise, focused on one topic. Things like thyroid, blood chemistry, SIBO, and specific testing like the OAT test and the Dutch test and things like that. FDN3 is a live version of training to get you prepared to sit for the NBHWC board certification, which is very intense. And it goes for weeks and weeks, but you learn a lot more of the health coaching and emotional wellness of somebody that you're working with. So it's not something we really focus a lot on in our initial training because there's just so much that you have to learn when it comes to interpreting labs and putting together protocols. But we offer this now for people so that you can really take that to the next level. So before we let you go, I'd love to just get your feedback on like, what did FDN3, what do you think that's going to do for you working with clients?
Well, I think the most important thing is I think that you will learn that FDN3, which is just about coaching, emotional coaching and wellness, it's partly designed as to reframe the practitioner's mindset, which I think was invaluable, about how the appropriate relationship with the client, not, and it's nothing outside of like physical. It's about the emotional connection, not being dependent on you, not being like, it's just very good about how you should be focusing. And then more importantly, what I would say the number one thing you can take away from it, it's how to get someone who's unmotivated, and I don't want to even say undisciplined because that's not right, but just is struggling a little bit to accomplish a goal or something set out for. Level 3 would teach you how to teach them to implement it without you actually doing anything. And I call it kind of, it's almost like voodoo Minecraft. It's amazing. I think everyone should do it. I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the best courses I've ever been in. But I think it's an unbelievable coaching thing that will teach you communication, not only with yourself, but just with like people around you and your clients, and you become better at everything. And I found that my just overall level of happiness, which is just so weird and hokey, in my life when we were doing level 3 boosted dramatically, because I was like monitoring my own actions, my own communication styles. Like, why did I do that? Oh, and it was really insightful. I was able to like reflect on a lot of why things I do things. But I think that level 3, the biggest thing that I see that it's so incredibly powerful for is you're going to be able to take people who are both unmotivated. And the number one thing that this is really funny how fortuitous life is. So when I was finishing college, my professor said, if you want to be successful in this industry, the number one thing you should worry about is behavior change. And that was like 25 years ago. And I was like, no, man, I need to know diet and exercise. I don't need to know behavior change. And so, but he was absolutely right. And level 3 is all about behavior change. And it's all about teaching someone how to make the behaviors that they need to change in along with the dress protocol so they can implement this and be successful in it in their day-to-day life. And how to communicate. And I think everyone should take it. I think it should be mandatory. I think it's an unbelievable course.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I mean, you're right. Like behavior change is a part of making better habits for your lifestyle, which just, completely changes everything and the way you see health and all of that. But also communication with client, like setting proper managing proper expectations, boundaries, and helping to empower them so that they kind of get out of their own head, like those limiting beliefs of like, I'll never get better, I'm broken. All of those things we know as FDNs and people who've kind of overcome health issues that those are garbage thoughts, and your body believes you when you think those things. So when you can change that and you can help somebody to change that, then they can help themselves, and their body will want to help themselves. So it's massively important. And Kim even said, helping people with mindset is a huge part of this. So yeah, FDN3, if you guys if you've graduated from it and you're interested, make sure you let us know. You can comment below, you can email us, contact support, the AFDNP Association. Like we're going to be doing another one in January, I think, or early next year. And you definitely don't want to miss out because the skills that you'll learn are just invaluable, like Matt said.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for commenting. This has been super fun to get to know Matt and to learn about what he's going to be talking about at the symposium. In case you guys missed it, it's FDNSymposium.com. This is going to be October 1st and 2nd. Tickets are only $129, and you'll get to listen to FDNs like Matt talk about how they've been able to take their FDN training and incorporate it to help clients. You're going to learn some fantastic tips and tools that you can actually start using, and also connecting with your peers so that you can become better practitioners, or to become a practitioner if you haven't already started your journey and you're looking to do so. So thank you so much, Matt, for joining me this week. I'm really excited to see your talk and hear more about what you have to do. Is there anything you wanted to leave the folks with this week?
I would highly suggest the symposium. And if you're not going to go, I'd definitely suggest FDN. If you either want to work with clients or want to work with yourself, there isn't anything you're not going to learn that's going to not help you. It's only going to better your position in life if you actually do it. Totally. Like you said, even if it's not for business, for your own health, it's totally worth it. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And for the ones of you who stuck around the entire time and have commented, I really appreciate all of you. My name is Jess Delpino. I'm your host for Health Coach Tip Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where you get tips, tools, and resources to help your health coaching business. And I'll see you again next week. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Matt.